The cameras were rolling. The lighting was clinical, harsh, unforgiving, the kind used in congressional hearings where truth and fiction clashed in real time. Donald Trump sat at the center of the stage, a smirk etched permanently into his face like a signature. Reporters leaned forward. Staffers held their breath. And in that precise moment, he leaned toward the mic and declared with chest-puffed certainty, "I built America. Period." Gasps didn't echo, but the silence did. His words didn't just hang, they slapped. Jasmine Crockett, seated 4 chairs down, didn't move. Not at first. Her gaze was fixed on the man, not in rage, not in disbelief, something far more dangerous, amusement. She tilted her head. The corner of her lip curled. And slowly, unmistakably, she let out a low, controlled laugh. Not loud, but enough. Enough to make half the room freeze. Enough to make the microphones pick it up. Trump's face twitched. For a man who demanded applause, laughter cut like acid. Jasmine finally turned, facing the room, but not addressing him, yet. Her eyes scanned the panel, then the crowd, then the cameras. She knew exactly where she was. She wasn't going to shout. She didn't have to. "You built America," she said at last, still facing forward. "Just want to clarify, was that before or after you inherited hundreds of millions from your father, or after you incited a riot on the Capitol?" The room snapped into attention. She didn't raise her voice. She raised the stakes. Trump opened his mouth, but no words followed. Not yet. This wasn't a campaign rally. This was a reckoning. And Jasmine Crockett had just picked up the mic, not to debate, but to dismantle. Trump leaned back, his eyes narrowing as if Jasmine's words had pulled him into unfamiliar terrain, a battlefield where applause didn't come prearranged. He shifted in his seat. Cameras zoomed in, trying to capture the crack in his composure. But Jasmine wasn't done. "Let's talk about building," she continued, calm, every syllable sharp enough to cut marble. "Because when working-class Americans think of building, they think of bridges, unions, teachers, nurses, immigrants, and soldiers. You think of brand names on towers you didn't lay a single brick for." Her voice was even, almost detached, but the room began to shift. Faces tightened. Eyes darted. A few staffers whispered to one another behind folders. The tension wasn't rising. It was already there, and Jasmine had simply drawn the outline with words. Trump tried to interrupt, his hand raised halfway like a traffic cop in his own courtroom. Jasmine glanced his way, briefly. "That's cute," she said, without missing rhythm. "But I let you finish your fairy tale." The audience wasn't laughing, but they weren't breathing either. "You didn't build America, Mr. Trump. America was built in spite of men like you. It was built by enslaved hands. By stolen labor. By immigrants who were told to go back but stayed and thrived. By women who weren't allowed to vote, then ran for Congress." Trump scoffed, loud. "You sound ungrateful." Jasmine turned fully now, finally meeting him head-on. "No," she replied. "I sound like history. The part you keep trying to bulldoze over." And just like that, the room leaned toward her, not him. She hadn't shouted. She didn't need to. She wasn't defending herself. She was defending truth, and letting it do what truth does best. Trump leaned forward now, gripping the edge of the table like it might stabilize the narrative he felt slipping from his hands. His voice, louder this time, boomed through the chamber. "Without me, this country would have collapsed. Lowest black unemployment. Strong borders. Stock market booming. You're welcome." It was a fireworks show of half-truths and self-congratulation. Jasmine didn't blink. Instead, she calmly reached into her leather folder, pulled out a thin stack of documents, and laid them neatly on the table. "You keep talking about records," she said, her tone flat. "Let's bring some into the room." The camera zoomed in again. The paper on top bore the seal of the Department of Labor. "Here's the breakdown," she continued. "The black unemployment rate started dropping under Obama. You rode that wave and claimed the beach. And that border wall you love to chant about? You left gaping holes, in funding, in construction, in humanity. The room was silent, except for the subtle click of camera shutters capturing the moment he stopped smiling. But let's stay focused, Jasmine added. You said you built America. That's interesting, because every time you've been handed responsibility, you declared bankruptcy. Universities, casinos, foundations, collateral damage in your empire of mirrors. Trump pointed at her, jabbing the air. That's a lie. Jasmine's voice didn't rise. It dropped, just enough to become heavier. The lie is pretending wealth equals leadership. That confidence equals competence. That shouting equals strength. And then she leaned in. You built branding, Mr. Trump. America built itself. The audience shifted again. Even some Republican panelists were staring straight ahead, hands clenched, unsure where to look. In that moment, Trump still sat on the stage. But Jasmine owned the room. Trump's jaw tightened. His fingers tapped the table, the rhythm offbeat, erratic. He was used to rallies, not rooms where facts were louder than chants. But Jasmine had the floor, and more importantly, the nation's pulse. She slid the next page from her folder like a dealer laying down an ace. It was a government contract audit. Remember this? She asked, not waiting for a reply. $1.2 billion allocated for border construction, half of it evaporated. Walls that collapsed in the wind. Contractors unpaid. Families displaced. Trump scoffed again, waving a hand. Fake news. Jasmine's eyes narrowed slightly. Government records, she replied. And while you were tweeting "I alone can fix it," real Americans were fixing roofs after hurricanes you politicized, hospitals you underfunded, and school districts you ignored. The room began to shift again. What had started as a debate was now an exposure. Let's go further, Jasmine said, standing now. You claimed to be a builder. But you didn't build healthcare. You didn't build trust. You didn't build unity. You built division, and stapled your name to the wreckage like it was gold-plated. Trump tried to cut in again. You Democrats ruined everything. But Jasmine raised her hand gently, palm out, no shouting necessary. I'm a Democrat, she said, but I'm not the one who told white supremacists to stand back and stand by. I'm not the one who tried to overturn an election I lost. And I sure as hell didn't put kids in cages and call it patriotism. Gasps now. Audible ones. Trump sat back, lips pressed tight. Jasmine lowered her voice to a near whisper, but every syllable landed like steel. You didn't build America, Mr. Trump. You tried to brand it. But the foundation of this country is deeper than ego. Stronger than lies. And it does not belong to you. The silence was not awkward. It was historic. The echo of Jasmine's words hadn't faded before Trump tried again. You're rewriting history. I brought pride back. I brought power back. The world respected us when I was in charge. It was a desperate swing for nostalgia, coated in arrogance. But Jasmine, still standing, didn't flinch. Her eyes locked on him, not in fury, but in dissection. Like a surgeon identifying rot. Respect built on fear, she said quietly, isn't power. It's intimidation. And that's not leadership, it's control. Trump laughed, but it sounded hollow. You confuse a microphone with a megaphone, Jasmine continued, walking slowly in front of the dais now, owning the space. You shout louder, thinking it makes your argument smarter. But history remembers actions. Not volume. She turned to the committee. You all heard him. I built America. So let's test that. Who built the roads in Flint? Who taught the kids in Baltimore? Who kept hospitals open in the South when funding dried up? Who bled in uniform while he tweeted insults from a golf course? The silence was growing heavier now. Not because she was loud. Because she was right. Trump opened his mouth again, reflex. But Jasmine cut across, smoothly. Let me guess. That was also you? A few muffled laughs from the gallery. Trump froze. You say, make America great again, but your version of great never included people who looked like me, loved like me, or prayed differently than you. Jasmine turned back to him, her voice now sharp as glass. You didn't build America. You just occupied a seat in it. And this time, even the silence was on her side. Trump now sat still, the usual bravado drained into clenched jawlines and darting glances toward his aides. But Jasmine wasn't performing. She wasn't there for applause. She was there for accountability. She leaned one hand on the table, her voice measured, a slow burn, not a blaze. Do you know what builders do, Mr. Trump? She asked. They show up. Quietly. Consistently. They listen. They serve. They put people before pride. That's why America endures, because of the people who build in silence while men like you scream over scaffolding you never touched. She reached into her file again. This time, she held up a simple photo, a black woman in a construction vest holding a child. Beside her, a sign read, Union Strong. She's America, Jasmine said. You branded towers. She built futures. Trump rolled his eyes. Another prop. Jasmine smiled slightly. No. That's a mirror. And I know how badly you avoid those. Gasps again. A pause. Then. You had 4 years, she continued. 4 years to prove you were more than a brand. More than bluster. But you spent them tweeting conspiracy theories, dodging subpoenas, and cozying up to dictators. Trump shifted in his seat, visibly bristling. I rebuilt the economy. Jasmine didn't flinch. You inherited the work of others. Then when crisis came, you passed the blame like a baton in a relay you never trained for. She stepped back, letting her words land. You didn't build America, Mr. Trump. You inflated it, like everything else in your life. And now? We're left to clean up the deflated promises. Even some of the committee members on his side didn't raise their eyes. The moment had turned. And Jasmine? She wasn't done. She was just getting warmed up. Trump's fingers curled into a loose fist. You could feel it, not the confidence of a builder, but the fragility of a man watching a false empire tremble under truth. The bravado was still there, but thinner now. It cracked at the edges. I'm a businessman, he barked. I made America rich again. Jasmine's reply came without pause. You made headlines. Not progress. She stepped forward once more, voice like calm thunder. You passed tax cuts for billionaires and left working families scrambling to afford insulin. You handed contracts to cronies while essential workers stitched their cities back together. You spent 4 years with gold curtains behind you while brown children cried behind cages. The room pulsed with silence. Even the sound tech stopped moving. You didn't build America, Jasmine repeated. You commodified it. Flipped it like real estate. Auctioned off dignity one soundbite at a time. Trump tried to deflect, as always. You know what your problem is? You hate success. Jasmine's laugh, short, sharp, sliced through the air. No, Mr. Trump. I hate fraud wrapped in flag colors. I hate when power disguises itself as service. And I especially hate when someone confuses attention with achievement. She turned to the cameras now, her words no longer just for him, but for everyone watching. America isn't a product line. It's not a casino, a university scam, or a brand to bankrupt. It's a promise. And people like you treat that promise like a prop. She turned back, one final time. You didn't build this country. But the people you ignored? They'll be the ones to rebuild it after you. Trump didn't respond. Not because he couldn't. but because the truth had finally built a wall around him. And there was no door out. By now, Trump had gone still, not frozen, not composed, just restrained. His usual tactics, interruption, mockery, misdirection, lay unused. Because Jasmine hadn't just countered him. She had peeled away the illusion he wrapped himself in. "Let me tell you what building looks like," Jasmine said, walking slowly past the panel, holding a photo up to the cameras. "This is Ms. Torres. A school custodian. Worked every day during the pandemic while your administration stalled stimulus checks. She didn't get a bailout. She got a broom and a prayer." She held up another. "This is Sergeant Malik. Lost his leg in Fallujah. Waited 13 months for a VA appointment while you tweeted about TV ratings." Trump shifted again. "These people aren't props," Jasmine said. "They're patriots. And they don't need gold elevators or private jets to matter." The room was breathless. "And you want to talk legacy?" Jasmine asked, raising a brow. "You left this country with a broken capital, a fractured public, and a trail of indictments longer than your inaugural speech." Trump mumbled, "Fake. Witch hunt." Jasmine turned to him slowly, deliberately. Her voice low, precise. "No, sir. Real people. Real damage. And now? Real accountability." She approached the final note in her binder, not a document, but a single sentence handwritten across the top. It read, "Leadership isn't claimed. It's earned, in the silence, in the sacrifice, in the shadow of those who came before." She looked up. "You didn't build America, Mr. Trump. But you made one thing clear: it's time we remember who actually did." In that instant, the line between performance and history vanished. And Jasmine Crockett stood alone, not as a speaker, but as the voice of a nation ready to rise from its rubble. Trump tried to smile. It came out crooked, an old salesman's reflex in a store that had already closed. But Jasmine wasn't smiling back. She stood still now, her posture calm but unrelenting. Her silence had its own gravity. "You talk about making America great again," she said slowly. "But your version of great meant silencing truth, erasing history, and selling rage to the highest bidder." She took a breath. "Your presidency wasn't a blueprint. It was a warning." Trump scoffed, louder this time. "You're a nobody trying to be relevant." Jasmine tilted her head slightly. "If relevance is built on harm, then thank you, I'll pass." She turned her body toward the gallery, letting her voice echo clearly. "America doesn't need gold-plated heroes. We need people who show up when the cameras don't. Who build policy, not platforms. Who know the Constitution isn't a prop for photo ops." She paused, then delivered it, the final fracture. "Mr. Trump, you didn't build this country. You broke its mirrors." The weight of that sentence pulled the room into stillness. Because everyone, regardless of party, knew it was true. She took one final step toward the dais. "You once said, 'What do you have to lose?'" Jasmine's voice dropped like a gavel. "Turns out, truth, trust, and time." The committee chair blinked, stunned. Aides fumbled for their papers. The gallery sat frozen, as if even the oxygen had turned to glass. And Trump? He had nothing left to say. Because in that moment, the man who claimed to build America had finally faced the woman who could tear the lie down, brick by brick, with nothing but her voice. The final seconds of the hearing didn't feel like an ending. They felt like a reckoning carved into the walls of history. Trump sat hunched forward now, no tweets, no slogans, just a silence that screamed louder than any rally chant. Jasmine, standing tall, didn't gloat. She didn't need to. Because truth doesn't need volume to echo. She looked at the committee one last time. This was never about ego. It was about record. Legacy. Reality. She turned to Trump, not with anger, but with something sharper, clarity. You wanted credit for building a country, she said, but all you really built was a mirror, one that reflected your own fears, your own fraud, your own fiction. And when people finally looked in that mirror, they didn't see greatness. They saw the cost of pretending. She placed her final note down. Just one sentence. 4 words. Handwritten. We remember the builders. Then she walked away, not rushed, not rattled. Just, resolved. The room didn't erupt. It didn't cheer. It exhaled. Because Jasmine hadn't just won an argument. She closed a chapter. And as the cameras pulled back, capturing Trump staring blankly ahead and Jasmine disappearing beyond the curtain, one truth burned brighter than the lights. He said he built America. She proved America was never his to claim. You can decorate a lie in marble. You can shout it from podiums. You can even convince millions to chant it with you. But the truth? It waits. And when it walks in, it doesn't knock. It enters. Mr. Trump claimed he built this nation. But America was built by people who sacrificed, not self-glorified. By voices that whispered justice while others screamed power. I didn't come here to win a debate. I came to remind this country of what's real. Because you can brand a tower. But you can't trademark a democracy. And no matter how many buildings you put your name on, you'll never own what you never earned. This is the United States of America. And no one man, no matter how loud, will ever be bigger than the people who built it.